Hello and welcome to episode 129 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie, I am your host, and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Today I'm going to be answering a question I get asked a lot in my free workshops, and if you're not signed up for the next free workshop, you can do so by following the link below. I host free online Akashic Records workshops every couple of months just for you to come along and to meet me in person, online in person, live anyway. To meet me, to come and ask any questions, to really find out about the Akashic Records from someone who works with them on a daily basis. Pop a link into the show notes for that one. That's on the 27th of August. Would love to see you there. If you can't attend live, as long as you're registered, you'll receive access to rewatch the replay. So the short answer to this question, is an Akashic Records reading the same as a past life regression, is no. And the reason for that is because Akashic Records readings are actually about a lot more than past lives. So past lives are going to come through in an Akashic Records reading in respect of if it's relevant to a question that you have asked in the answer that the guides are providing you with. So yes, past lives are something that can be covered in an Akashic Records reading, but it isn't the focal point of the Akashic Records reading. So that's the short answer. So now let's get into the long answer. The Akashic Records and having an Akashic Records reading are really about helping you to know yourself, to truly understand yourself from this objective soul level perspective that the Akashic Records can offer. When it comes to an Akashic Records reading, what you're doing is you're trying to ask questions and the reader is trying to obtain answers to really help you to know yourself, to understand yourself from that objective soul level perspective, which may, of course, include some past life information. Now, let's take a look at how the two sessions work and we can talk about why they are different. For the record, I'm not a past life regressionist, but I have had past life regression. So I've experienced it. So my answer is going to be based on my experience of it rather than being a practitioner of past life regression. And also I want to just say here that I am not saying for 1 second that one is better than the other, that an Akashic Records reading is better than a past life regression. I think both are very useful and they're both very useful modalities that are going to help you on your spiritual journey, but they are different and that's what I want to get into now. Let's look first at the technical side of the session. In a past life regression, the regressionist, the person who's hosting the session, is going to guide you into a state of trance or a state of hypnosis. And then they are going to ask you certain questions, and those questions are designed to help you connect to and explore your past lives. That's how the session works. This is very different from an Akashic Records reading. It did used to be necessary, especially in the times of Edgar Cayce, that to be able to access the Akashic Records, you had to go into a trance state. Now, this is no longer the case, and this is no longer the case because, as you all know, we are going through this expansion of consciousness. And as part of this expansion of consciousness, it has become, in the 100 years since Edgar Cayce was doing his readings, it's become much easier for people to access their own Akashic Records, and this is something that everybody can do. So now what is people who are accessing the Akashic Records are going to do it usually via meditation or via a prayer, and they're both two methods that I teach. So it isn't necessary anymore for the individual to go into a trance state. So when it comes to having an Akashic Records reading, all you have to do as the person having the reading is to bring your questions and, of course, an open mind as well. The reader is not going to put you into a trance state. They're not going to put you into a state of hypnosis. They're not going to go into a trance state or a state of hypnosis. What's going to happen is they're going to use a method, and most often this is a prayer. And by utilizing that prayer, they're going to enter your Akashic Records, obviously with your consent as you're having a reading. And what's going to happen is you're going to ask the questions and the reader is then going to channel the guidance through for you from your Akashic Records guide. The reader is just transmitting the information. It is a form of channeling, but it isn't a form of trance. And it isn't a form of hypnosis, and you as the sitter do not have to change your conscious state. You're very aware while this is happening. So as you can see, technically they're very different. Now let's take a look at the type of information that comes through in the past life regression and also Akashic Records readings. In a past life regression, you're going to get a lot of detail as you're connecting into that past life. So for example, You may see scenes of your past life playing out. You may feel really immersed in it. And you can explore that lifetime in detail. So, for example, you might know your name, how many kids you have. You might know where you are in the world. You might know the time period that you're experiencing. Everyone's experience is going to be different, but what is the kind of key feature of it is the detail. It does tend to be quite a detailed experience. Whereas in an Akashic Records reading, the details when it comes to past lives is determined by the masters, teachers, and loved ones in respect of what is relevant. So, for example, it might not be relevant for you to know your name in a past lifetime, but it might be relevant for you to know something that you experienced in a past lifetime. And that isn't determined by the reader. It's not up to the reader how much detail comes through, because the reader is just channeling the information. The level of detail that is needed to answer the question is something that's determined by the Akashic Records guides, the masters, teachers, and loved ones, based on the question that you are answering. What I have seen in my thousands of readings experience is that the amount of detail that you're going to get about past lives in an Akashic Records reading is going to be different for everybody. And it's different based on what that individual needs to know, the question that they're asking, and of course what the masters, teachers, and loved ones determine is relevant to them. So in some cases, I have had extremely detailed past life information come through, and there's been a lot of it. In other cases, there's just been a general overview. And of course, when it comes to clearing and doing Akashic Records clearing, we do tend to see a lot more detail in the clearing session when it comes to past life, because the focus of the clearing session is moving through that energetic stagnation caused by things like past life trauma, ancestral issues. So the focus tends to be different. Now, you can, of course, choose to focus your entire Akashic Records reading session on past lives if that's what you want to do. But actually, if you're really wanting to do a detailed exploration into your past lives, then I think past life regression is probably going to be your better option. If you want to understand yourself from that objective soul level perspective, then that's where the Akashic Records are going to come in. Also, please bear in mind that each Akashic Records reader, is going to read differently. And it's not that people are doing it right or wrong. It's just that the Akashic Records are going to choose how they work through you. And I'm teaching people how to be professional Akashic Records readers and work with the clearing aspect as professionals. One of the things that I see time and time again is just different people will have different strengths. They'll have different areas of focus. So, for example, when I am doing a reading for somebody, I am going to set the intention before that reading to ensure that, of course, I'm the clearest channel that I can be, that I can channel as much guidance for that individual as they need, that is really going to help them better align to and really embody their soul, to really help them align to that highest timeline and that position of spiritual sovereignty. That's the intention that I'm setting. Other readers are going to set different intentions. I know there are readers out there who focus solely on past lives on Earth. I know there are readers out there who focus solely on past lives off Earth. And all of that's okay and all of that's beautiful. And that's why it's important for you to get to know the reader that you're working with in respect of what it is you're wanting to get out of your Akashic Records reading so that you align to the right person. So I hope that you can see from today's discussion that both modalities are helpful. Past life regressions are great if you want to really get into detail and explore your past lives in details. Akashic Records readings are great if you want to receive that guidance directly from those guides in respect of questions that you have. And in some cases, the answers that the guides give may have past life information involved. If you're listening to this and think, I'd love to have an Akashic Records reading, but I don't know what questions I'd ask, what questions can you ask? I have a free 101 question ebook over on my website. I'll pop a link into the show notes so you can get that downloaded. That is very much just a guide. It's just a starting point, but it's separated out into different sections so that you can see the range of questions that you can ask. So please don't feel restricted by those, but if you are a little bit stuck as to where you'd even start, I would recommend, if you haven't already, downloading that ebook. And of course, if you're interested in an Akashic Records reading with me, I run that on waitlist only, and that waitlist is emailed with any free spaces that I have. So again, I'll pop a link into the show notes for the waitlist. It is just run on a first come, first serve basis when those slots are opened, and they are only open periodically throughout the year. So If you want to be added to that list, just put your name down on there and you'll get emails as and when those slots become available. So I hope this has answered that question, and now you can see how there is a little bit of a difference between the two. And then you can choose which session is right for you in respect of what it is that you need at this time that's best going to support you on your spiritual journey. And I, of course, will see you next week for the next episode.